Okay, so let's jump right into it. Um, this topic is really blowing up right now, and it's something that I think we need to take a closer look at.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely one of those issues that's
Bathroom access,
yeah, bathroom access in
and
Congress.
specifically in the U.S. Congress.
Hmm.
And it's not just about, well, I mean, it is about bathrooms, but it's also about so much more.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This is about transgender rights, and it's hitting the headlines because it involves Sarah McBride, the very first openly transgender congresswoman.
Which is a big deal in and of itself. But what makes this whole thing even more fascinating is that,
Well, I think what's really interesting is how this is playing out. You've got this personal story, McBride's story, unfolding against this backdrop of, shifting societal norms and deeply held beliefs.
and those beliefs are playing out in a very public way right now, with Representative Nancy Mace introducing this resolution to ban transgender women from using women's restrooms in the Capitol building.
And it's very specifically targeting McBride.
Yeah, which makes the whole thing even more,
Contentious, for sure.
yeah, definitely contentious. Especially because Mace has a bit of a history of supporting LGBTQ rights and equality.
Right, and that's what makes this so intriguing. Like, it has people asking what's changed. Is this a political strategy? Is she responding to pressure from certain constituents? Or has there been a genuine shift in her views?
Yeah, I mean, her current stance is pretty strong.
Oh, absolutely.
She recently said, if you think protecting women is discrimination, you are the problem. We don't care if you're trans.
That's a powerful statement, and it really kind of it puts it out there. It frames the issue as kind of a zero-sum game. It suggests that protecting the rights of women automatically means taking away the rights of transgender individuals.
And that makes finding common ground extremely difficult, right?
Yeah, I mean, it really fuels that division and makes it much harder to have a productive conversation.
And then you have House Speaker Mike Johnson jumping into the mix.
Right, adding another layer.
Exactly. He's voicing his support for Mace's resolution and saying women deserve women's only spaces. And he wants to restrict what he calls single-sex facilities based on biological sex, which would include restrooms.
And that raises some really important questions about, how do we define single-sex facilities and who gets to decide who belongs in those spaces? And I think it gets to the heart of the whole debate around gender identity. Is it just about biological sex, or should it include a broader understanding of gender, one that includes people who identify as transgender?
And, it gets even more complicated when you consider that Johnson claims to treat everyone with dignity.
Right, right.
How can those two ideas coexist?
Yeah, I mean, how can you have a policy that many people see as discriminatory while also saying that you treat everyone with dignity?
It seems like a contradiction.
It does, doesn't it? And I think that contradiction is precisely what makes this situation so fascinating. It highlights the tension between individual beliefs and the impact that policies have on marginalized groups.
So how do we even begin to navigate this?
Well, it's not easy. It reveals the complexities of trying to navigate this issue in a way that respects both individual rights and the need for inclusion.
And then in the middle of all of this, you have McBride responding with incredible composure.
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
like she's not even fazed by the personal attacks.
Yeah, it's almost like she's rising above the fray.
Instead of getting caught up in the controversy, she's focusing on serving her constituents and downplaying the attacks. Like it's not even about her.
It's a very strategic approach.
Right.
By focusing on her legislative agenda and talking about her commitment to the people of Delaware, she's shifting the narrative away from this bathroom debate. It's like she's saying, I'm here to do a job, and that job is to serve my constituents, not to get bogged down in these personal attacks.
She even said, I'm not here to fight about bathrooms. I'm here to fight for Delawareans and to bring down costs facing families.
It's a powerful statement, and it really resonates with people who see this whole resolution as a distraction. Like,
Yeah.
come on, let's focus on the real issues.
Exactly. And she went on to say that this is and I'm quoting here, blatant attempt from far right-wing extremists to distract from the fact that they have no real solutions to what Americans are facing.
Oh, wow. So she's not holding back.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
She's framing this debate within a much broader context.
Mm.
It's like she's saying that this is just a tactic, a way to divert attention from the lack of solutions to these real economic problems.
And that's a really savvy move politically.
Totally agree. It's like she's taking a page from the playbook of seasoned politicians, elevating the conversation beyond this immediate controversy.
Exactly. She's playing the long game.
And what's really interesting is that even though McBride disagrees with Johnson's stance, she said that she'll follow the rules as outlined by Speaker Johnson.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. Even if she sees it as unfair, she's choosing to comply.
It's a powerful statement.
It really is. It shows a willingness to engage within the system, even if she feels like the system is stacked against her. And it also prevents her opponents from painting her as defiant or disruptive.
So we've got Mace's resolution, Johnson's support, and McBride's calm but firm response.
Right. A real clash of ideology.
And of course, this has ignited a ton of reactions from both sides of the aisle.
Oh, absolutely. And those reactions are really revealing.
In what way?
Well, they highlight the deep divisions and the strong emotions surrounding this whole issue. It's clear that this is something people feel very strongly about on both sides, like with the Democrats, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. He didn't hold back. He accused Republicans of bullying and basically questioning their priorities. Is this really the most important thing you could be focusing on right now?
I mean, that's pretty harsh, right? Is he just trying to rally support for McBride by making Republicans look bad?
I mean, it's definitely possible. It's a classic political tactic, using strong language like bullying to appeal to people's sense of fairness. And, it kind of highlights the power imbalance here. You've got this powerful group targeting a newcomer who also happens to be a member of a marginalized community.
Yeah. So it's like he's saying that Republicans are picking on McBride.
Yeah, essentially. And by doing that, he's also kind of implying that they're attacking the values of inclusivity and tolerance, the idea that everyone deserves to be treated with respect, regardless of their gender identity.
Okay, so I get that part. But it seems like a lot of Democrats are on the same page as Jeffries.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Rep. Jamie Raskin called Mace's proposal discriminatory and insulting. And Rep. Pramila Jayapal went even further. She said it was hateful and dangerous and completely unnecessary.
Wow. So they're not mincing words.
Not at all. And I think these strong reactions really show just how sensitive this issue is for a lot of Democrats.
Because it's about more than just bathrooms.
Exactly. For them, it's about the fundamental rights and safety of transgender individuals. They see this resolution as a direct attack on a vulnerable community, and they're responding with a sense of urgency and moral outrage.
Yeah, Jayapal even said, and this is a direct quote, "Trans people represent 1/2 of 1% of Americans. Mind your own damn business and let them be."
Wow, that's pretty blunt.
Yeah, it really speaks to this feeling that this is a manufactured controversy. Why are we even talking about this?
Absolutely. That statement perfectly captures the frustration that a lot of people in the LGBTQ plus community are feeling. They feel targeted and misunderstood, and they're just pleading for empathy and acceptance.
Yeah, it's like they're saying we're just trying to live our lives. Why is this even an issue?
Exactly. And it's not just the House either. Even Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer got involved. He condemned Mace's resolution as mean and cruel.
So this is spreading.
Oh, yeah. This isn't just a House issue anymore. It has implications for the entire Congress, and it could even affect future legislation related to transgender rights.
Right.
Schumer getting involved is a big deal. It shows that this has the potential to escalate and become a major point of contention between the two parties.
So it seems like this is much bigger than just what's happening in Congress.
Absolutely. This is a microcosm of the larger struggle for transgender rights that's happening across the U.S. This situation really shines a light on the challenges that transgender people face when it comes to accessing public spaces and being treated with dignity.
And it also makes us think about the role of government. Should the government be involved in regulating gender identity and expression?
Right. Where do we draw the line between individual liberty and protecting the rights of marginalized groups? It's a tough question.
And then there's the whole First Amendment and religious freedom arguments that always seem to come up.
Oh, yeah. Those definitely muddy the waters. Both sides use these principles to justify their positions.
So how do we even start to figure this out? Feels like every argument has a counter-argument, and there's no easy answer.
It's definitely complex.
Right.
I think one way to appreciate it is to look at the legal precedents that have been set over the years. There have been a number of court cases that have dealt with transgender rights, especially in the context of public accommodations.
So what kinds of cases?
Well, a lot of them have focused on anti-discrimination laws and whether those laws apply to transgender people. One case that really stands out is Price Waterhouse v. Hopkins. It was decided by the Supreme Court back in 1989.
Okay, but that wasn't about transgender rights specifically, right?
No, not directly. But it did establish the concept of sex stereotyping as a form of sex discrimination. And that's been really influential in later cases involving transgender people.
How so?
Well, it basically suggests that discrimination based on gender nonconformity is a form of sex discrimination.
So even though it wasn't directly about transgender rights, this case set a legal precedent that has had an impact on how we understand discrimination based on gender identity.
Exactly. It's a great example of how legal precedents can evolve and be applied to new situations. And it also shows how complicated legal interpretation can be. Courts are constantly grappling with evolving societal norms and changing understandings of gender.
This is making my head spin.
I know, right? It's a lot to unpack. But I think it's important to remember that this isn't just about bathrooms. It's about how we as a society define gender, how we respect individual identities, and how we balance competing rights and beliefs.
You're right. It's like this whole debate is a reflection of where we are as a society, and it's forcing us to confront some really fundamental questions.
Absolutely. And it's a reminder that the fight for equality is an ongoing process. Progress isn't always linear.
Okay, so we have this clash of ideologies, we have strong reactions from both sides of the aisle, and we have a legal landscape that's still evolving. So where does that leave McBride? She's the one at the center of this whole storm.
That's a great question. And it brings us to another really important aspect of this debate, the personal impact. We've been talking about the political and legal ramifications, but we can't forget that this is ultimately about real people's lives.
That's true. It's easy to get lost in the abstract arguments and forget that there are real people who are affected by this.
Exactly. So let's take a moment to think about McBride's initial response to all of this. She really emphasized the importance of respectful engagement and focusing on the real issues facing Americans.
Yeah, I remember that. She said, every day Americans go to work with people who have life journeys different than their own and engage with them respectfully. I hope members of Congress can muster that same kindness.
Right. That was such a powerful message, especially in the midst of all this heated rhetoric.
It really was. And it says a lot about McBride's approach to politics and her hope for a more inclusive and understanding society.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that even when we're faced with adversity, kindness and empathy can be incredibly powerful forces for change.
It's hard to argue with that sentiment.
Yeah.
But the question remains, how do we bridge the divide on an issue that's so personal and politically charged?
That's the million-dollar question, right? I think finding common ground requires a willingness to listen to learn and to empathize with people who hold different views. And it also requires a commitment to finding solutions that respect the dignity and rights of all individuals.
That sounds like a really tall order, especially given how polarized things are right now.
It is. But I do believe it's possible. And I think a good place to start is by acknowledging the fears and concerns on both sides of the issue. For example, the people who support this resolution might have genuine concerns about safety and privacy in restrooms.
Right, and those concerns shouldn't just be dismissed. They need to be heard and addressed in a way that doesn't diminish the rights and experiences of transgender people.
Exactly. And then on the other side, transgender individuals have very real fears about being discriminated against, harassed, and even physically harmed. Their experiences are just as valid, and we need to take them seriously.
So it sounds like creating a space for dialogue is crucial, a space where these different perspectives can be shared and acknowledged even if people don't agree.
Absolutely. But it can't just be a superficial conversation. It needs to be a genuine attempt to understand the complexities of this issue, the nuances of the legal arguments, and the lived experiences of the people who are most affected by these policies. So it's not about trying to force everyone to agree. It's more about fostering a deeper understanding and respect for the different perspectives that are out there.
Exactly. And while this particular debate is about bathroom access, it really reflects a much broader conversation about inclusion, about diversity, and about what it means to build a society where everyone feels safe and respected.
And that conversation is happening everywhere, right? Not just in Congress, but in our workplaces, our schools, our families.
Absolutely. It's a conversation that's going to continue for a while. But I'm hopeful that if we can have these difficult conversations with empathy and a willingness to learn, we can move closer to creating a society that truly values and respects all of its members.
Wow, so much to think about. It feels like we've only just scratched the surface here. This deep dive has been, a whirlwind of information. So many different viewpoints and a lot of strong emotions.
Yeah, for sure. We've gone from political strategy to legal complexities and, most importantly, the very real impact that this whole debate is having on people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's clear that this debate over transgender rights and bathroom access, it's not going away anytime soon.
No, not at all. It really gets to the heart of how we see ourselves as a society, our beliefs, about gender and identity and what kind of world we want to live in.
And how do we even move forward? Like, where do we go from here?
Well, I think the most important thing is to move forward with a commitment to understanding empathy and a willingness to have these tough conversations, even when they're uncomfortable.
It's easy to get lost in the back and forth and forget that, at the center of this are real people.
Absolutely. People who just want to live their lives with dignity and respect.
It feels like we need to get beyond the sound bites and the oversimplifications and really try to grapple with the nuances.
I think that's key. This isn't about easy answers.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing the complexity and being willing to engage in a more thoughtful way.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm left with some big questions like, how do we balance individual rights and beliefs with the need to create a world that's more inclusive and just for everyone?
That's a question that's been around for a long time. And I don't think there's one simple answer. But I do think that recognizing that true equality doesn't mean everyone has to agree on everything is important. It's about respecting each other's humanity, even when we have different viewpoints.
And what about the role of government? Should the government be involved in regulating access to public spaces based on gender identity? Is it about individual liberty, or is it about protecting marginalized groups?
Tough questions. And these are questions that are being debated everywhere right now, in courtrooms, in legislatures, in communities all across the country.
So it sounds like there's no easy solution.
Not really. It's going to require ongoing dialogue and a willingness to try to find common ground.
This deep dive has definitely given me a lot to think about. I really appreciate you taking the time to break down this issue and help me see it from different angles.
My pleasure. It's been great talking about this with you.
And to our listener, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. I hope it's given you some things to think about as well.
And keep in mind that this conversation isn't over. Keep learning, keep listening, and keep engaging.
Exactly. Thanks again, and until next time, keep diving deep